Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Akash Bhunia and you are watching Lawve. Today we'll begin from right where we left in the last video. We are doing Indian Easements Act 1882. This is part 2 of the series. To watch part 1, click right here. But now let's start today's video. Today we're gonna understand the various classifications of easement. Today we're gonna do section 5 of the Indian Easement Act. Let's begin. Right, so now we are in section 5 of the Indian Easement Act 1882. Section 5 categorizes easement into two heads. Firstly, it divides easement according to its continuity, and then it divides easement according to its visibility. We'll see one by one, and once we're done, everything will be pretty clear to you. So let's start with dividing easement according to continuity. In this head, easement is divided into continuous easement and non-continuous easement or discontinuous easement. Continuous easement is the one the enjoyment of which is or may be continual without active action in part of a man. That is, this type of easement right can exist without any human interference. So even if someone is not currently enjoying the easement right, the right does exist. Let me give you an example to make things clear. So suppose there are two houses right here, house A and house B, and the sun is shining here. Now the right of house B to have the sunlight falling into its window without the interference of the members of house A is an example of continuous easement right. Now why do I say that? I say that because the owner or occupant of house B, even if in a particular moment is not enjoying the sunlight, the owner or occupant of house B cannot do anything that may obstruct the sunlight from getting into house B. The moment he or she does that, he infringes the easement right of the owner or occupant of house B. So this right is an example of continuous right because at every point of time, the owner or occupant of house A is required to allow that easement right to happen. The moment he stops it, it doesn't matter whether at that particular moment the members or the occupant or owner of house B was enjoying the right or not. The moment he stops it, he infringes his right. This is an example of continuous easement right. The opposite of continuous easement right is, of course, discontinuous easement right. So in discontinuous easement right, there needs to be an active action of a man for the easement right to exist. Let's take another example. Let's take the example from the previous video where the occupants of house B needed the passageway in house A to access their house. This is an example of discontinuous easement right, and you can understand why. See, this easement right of way only exists when a member or occupant of house B is actually using the passageway of house A to gain access to house B. In that very moment when he or she is using that particular passageway, the right exists. In any other time, nothing is stopping the owner or occupant of house A to block that passageway. All he has to make sure is that when any owner or occupant of house B needs to access that passageway, he or she can do that. But they have no liability to keep the passageway open and operational 24/7. So because this easement right only exists when the member or owner or a man actively uses the passageway or actively uses the right, this is called discontinuous easement right because this right does not exist all the time. Okay, now so the next parameter of differentiation of easement right is according to its visibility. And according to this parameter, easement can be divided into apparent and non-apparent easement. Let me explain it to you one by one, and once we are done, it will be clear to you as a winter Kolkata daylight. Not winter Delhi daylight because it's still hazy.
Pura kohra hi kohra.
So an apparent easement is an easement, the existence of which is shown by a permanent sign, which upon inspection by a competent person will be visible to him. Take this example from the previous video. We have two adjacent plots of farmland, plot A and plot B. The well exists in plot A and the owner or occupant of plot B uses the water from the well in plot A to irrigate his land. But how does he take out the water from the well and irrigate his land? He draws a pipeline from the well all the way to his land, and there he fixes a tube well or a pump, whatever, and he pumps out the water from the well. Now suppose you or I as a neutral person arrive at that scene. What do we see? We'll see that there is a well in plot A. From the well there is a pipeline that goes to plot B, and through that pipeline the owner or occupant of plot B is drawing out water from the well in plot A by means of a pump or tube well. So this is an example of apparent easement right, because a neutral person who has no idea of the scenario, no idea of the arrangement, just by looking at the scenario can apprehend or understand the existence of an easement right. A neutral person in this case, by just looking at the scenario, can understand that the owner or occupant of plot B is drawing out water from the well in plot A for irrigating his land. Hence, this is an example, or this is an example of apparent easement right. Now, the diametrically opposite part of apparent easement right is non-apparent easement right. In non-apparent easement right, there is no sign that will clearly tell you that there is an existence of an easement right. For example, let's again go back to the two plot and the well example. Only this time, the owner of plot B does not use a pipeline to pump out the water from the well. In place, he goes physically to the well in plot A, draws out the water by means of a pulley, and carries it back to his land. Yes, right now you might be thinking, why on earth would someone like to do that? It's painstaking and inefficient. But hey, it's an example. Examples are not always practical. So, in this case, now suppose you and I, as a neutral observer, neutral spectator, arrive at that scene. What do we see? We see nothing. We see two plots of land. We see a well in plot A. But by no means we can understand that the owner or occupant of plot B is using the water from the well of plot A to irrigate his land. Only when the owner of plot B is actually drawing up the water from the well and carrying it back to his land, and we see him at that particular point of time, we might be able to understand that there is an easement right that exists between these two lands. Otherwise, there is no sign present in this scenario that can tell a neutral spectator that an easement right exists. Hence, this is a non-apparent easement right, because there is no sign that tells a neutral spectator that an easement right actually exists. So you're with me till now? Great, because you're done. Yes, that is all we have for today's lesson. What we'll do now is that we'll recap what we studied in this lesson. I would suggest you to pause the video and try to recollect all the information that has been thrown at you throughout this video. Then resume the video and see if you got it all right. So to summarize, we studied Section 5 of the Indian Easements Act 1882 today. Section 5 of the Indian Easements Act 1882 classifies easement. The classification is done in two parameters. One of the parameters is continuity, that is, the classification of easement in this case is done on the basis of continuity. In this parameter, we got continuous easement, in which case the easement right exists without any human interference, and for example, we got the right to light thing. Then we got non-continuous or discontinuous easement, where active human interference is required for the easement right to exist. Here we saw the right to way example. The next parameter in which easements can be divided was visibility. Here the easement was divided into apparent and non-apparent easement. In apparent easement, the signs of the existence of the easement right is visible to the naked eye. We saw the example of the two plots and the well and the water being drawn by a pipe through a pump or a tube well. Next we got non-apparent easement, where the visible signs of the easement does not exist. A neutral spectator cannot, by just seeing at the scenario, tell that a easement right exists. Here we got the example of the two lands and the well again, but in this case the water was drawn physically by means of a pulley by the owner of the adjacent plot of land. So that's it, we're done for today's video. In the next lesson, we'll do section 6 and some more. So please stay tuned, and if you're watching this video much later, then the end screen will be coming in a few seconds. Just tap that and that will redirect you to the next lesson. Consider liking and subscribing this video if you like this video and the other videos of the channel. And also follow me in various social media platforms where I upload regular 1-minute info videos and generally just try to add value to your life. Ta-da! See you in the next one.